Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, and we welcome you all for this 10th session of Bhakti Yoga Made Easy. And today we will be continuing first with the part 2 of the Sakhyam, because we left Sakhyam in between, and then after finishing that we would enter into the 9th process of devotional service, that is Atma Nivedanam. And before we proceed any further, we have received lot of messages wishing us happy Teachers Day. So we are very, very grateful, thankful to each one of you for sending those messages. And we all must also remember Srila Prabhupada, who is the best teacher probably who has walked on the planet. Not only did he teach by his words, but he lived his whole life in such an exemplary manner that he became the most wonderful teacher who taught by his own personal examples. And whatever we are trying to understand, whatever we are explaining to all of you, these scriptures, these stories from Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and other books like Chaitanya Charitamrita, nothing would have been possible if Srila Prabhupada was not there. So before we begin, we would all like to express our gratitude to Srila Prabhupada by loudly chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So whatever little spark of goodness if you see in us, it is nothing but an insignificant reflection of Srila Prabhupada's mercy. So all glories to Srila Prabhupada, and we would continue with the session now. So here we were discussing about the timeless friend, and as we discussed the abbreviation, we made something simple so that we all can remember. So in the last session we covered 4, that is F for as in favorable, and we discussed the pastime of Sugriv and Lord Ramchandra, then R as in rapport, and we discussed the wonderful rapport which is there between Krishna and Balram. With I we discussed intimate friends like Madhumangal and Subal, E as an ethical guide, and then in the last question answer session we got a couple of questions asking us about Draupadi and Sudama. So these two characters, these two wonderful personalities we would be discussing today. N as in nurture, and we will discuss Sudama and Krishna's friendship, and D as in dependable, we would discuss the friendship, the very special bond of Krishna and Draupadi. So here we begin. So I invite all of you to join us for nurture, Krishna and Sudama's pastime. So it is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, 2 specific chapters are completely dedicated in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter I think 80 and 81, which talks about Sudama, and we discuss the qualities of Sudama. So the chapter opens, and in the 5th or 6th verse itself the qualities of Sudama is mentioned, and 4 very specific things are mentioned there. So as it is there in front of your slide, so the first one is he is learned in Vedic knowledge. So he is very, very thorough with the Vedic literature. He is detached from any sense gratification. He does not have the desire to enjoy his senses. So that is the second wonderful quality in him. The third is because he was detached from sense enjoyment, so his mind is always very peaceful. So he is very peaceful and calm. And the senses were subdued, because senses were never given the addiction to get into material enjoyment. So the senses were quite subdued, and that is why the life was very peaceful for him. Though it is also mentioned there that he would like accept whatever would come in the charity, and that is how he was maintaining his livelihood, and that is why he was quite poverty struck. He would wear the clothes which were completely torn and dirty. There were big holes in his clothes, and his body, I mean, he was so emaciated that one could practically see all the veins in his body also. So that is what his condition was. But interestingly enough, he was completely satisfied with his condition, and he has no regrets, no lamentations, no hankering for I want this and that, nothing. He was completely satisfied with his life. And he had a wife and family. So the wife, it is described that she was also like very selfless lady. In fact, it is mentioned that she was more selfless and self-satisfied than even Sudama, because whatever little charity Sudama would get home, so the wife would cook everything and would offer first to the husband and then to the children, and if something was left she would take, otherwise she would just starve, like she would just not eat. So she was so wonderful lady, she was a very chaste wife, and so this is how they were somehow managing their life. Now the wife of Sudama very well knew that Krishna was a close friend of Sudama, and she also knew that Krishna was the ruler now. He was in Dwarka and he was a famous king and he had so much of opulence for himself. So one day she approached her husband and she was like trembling with fear because how the husband would react, and gradually she opened up the topic and her face was like quite dried up because of hunger, because of starving. But it is mentioned that she does not come forward on her own account. She could not see, she could not tolerate the condition of her family members, of her husband, and that is why she came forward and she started the discussion. So now this picture what you are seeing, so we have one more devotee who has joined our team for sketching and painting. So this is done by Ruchika. So thank you Ruchika for this beautiful painting. So we are trying to depict here Sudama and his wife. So the wife spoke to Sudama out of fear but with using all her intelligence and giving proper logic, and she started speaking to her husband. So she reminded him of Supreme Lord Krishna, and she said that I know that Krishna is very, very compassionate to the Brahmanas and he is very warm and willing to give shelter to all the Brahmanas. So she requested, could you please approach him because he is the real shelter of all saints. He said that without even your asking, he would give you so much of money that we can very comfortably live our life. And then she said that as of now, he is staying in Dwarka and it is known about Krishna that what to talk of his friends, anyone, any person who remembers Krishna, he gives that person complete shelter. He takes care of that person as his own, as his very own family member. So she said that on these pretext, I kindly request you, can you just go and meet your friend and come? So Sudama started thinking, and Sudama thought, okay, anyway, life is difficult here in the sense that children are not getting enough to eat and all. But then the thought what triggered in Sudama is, this is a good excuse. I can go from here and I can meet Krishna. So Sudama had just one desire. Sudama did not desire money or opulence or anything, not even basic necessities of life. What did he desire? He desired to have darshan of Krishna. So he thought that yeah, this is good, so I will go and meet Krishna, but then I cannot go empty-handed. So I need to carry some gift for my friend. So do you have any gift? So imagine, this is our Vedic culture, this is our glorious Vedic culture, that when we go to anybody's house, now here Sudama who did not had anything, in fact it is described that there were no rats in his house because there was nothing to eat. So they were so poor, and yet here he is asking that if there is anything which I can take as a gift, and then I will go and meet him. So on that, Sudama's wife begged from the neighbor's house. She begged 4 handfuls of flat rice from neighboring Brahmanas, and that she tied in a piece of cloth, and that she took for, she gave Sudama. I can see here there is a request that there is some lag in the voice and the video. Is there a lag in the voice and video? So I'll continue anyway. Our technical expert Dipankar Prabhu is checking out. So yes, so we will continue and we will see what is a life lesson, what we can learn here, and then we will go further. So here is a life lesson for all of us. Genuine devotion should reflect in our dealings with everyone around us. It must make us a better person in our worldly dealings too. So here we see that one, how Sudama dealt with his wife. So Sudama was like, he did not get furious, he did not reject her request, he accepted that request. Second, when we talk about the worldly dealing, now this is another thing, that when we go to others' house, then we take a gift. So here they are all, these wonderful devotees are actually teaching us from their own personal life, by their own example, as how only devotion, if I have only devotion, then it should get reflected in my dealings with all my family members. So it is not that I become Krishna's devotee and then I start treating that, okay, my mother is Maya, my father is an illusion, and I don't have any duties towards them. No, it is not proper attitude. So what should happen is, it must get reflected in our dealing with everybody. So let's go further. Life lesson not seen.
On Facebook.
Okay, I think now you can see the life lesson. There was some lag. Okay. So going further here, so Sudama started his journey. So Sudama started traveling, and it is described that Sudama had one constant meditation. Will I be able to see Krishna? Can I get his audience? Will he still remember me? Will I be allowed to go and speak to Krishna? So continuously, he was not thinking whether Krishna will give money and how much rich I would become and how he would deal with me. He was not thinking of all those things. He was just thinking that if I'll be able to see Krishna. So in this way, he passed 3 guard stations. He went through 3 gateways, and then he finally entered the town, and one after the other he started crossing Krishna's devotees' houses, and with great anxiety in his heart he proceeded further, and finally he entered the opulence palace. So it is described that along with him were a couple of local brahmanas, and somehow in Dwarka at that time this was a rule that the brahmana would not be stopped or checked. So he straight away goes to the palace, and this is Rukmini Devi's palace, and Krishna was sitting in the palace, and from a distance it is described that Krishna could actually see Sudama coming in. So here it is that Krishna actually, when he saw, now this painting is also from Ruchika. So Krishna saw Sudama, and Lord Achyuta was seated on his consort's bed, like he was on the bed, and from there he ran. Krishna immediately stood up, he went forward to meet him, and with great pleasure he embraced. And the moment Lord's body touched Brahmana's body, it is described that in intense ecstasy, Lord started shedding tears. Lord Krishna was crying, weeping and crying when he sees Sudama there. He gave him a tight hug, and he started crying over there. And then he welcomed him. So then he took him inside, he seated him upon the bed, Rukmini and Krishna's bed. So on his personal bed, he invited the Brahmana, he seated him, he offered the token of respects. So as a respect, what first thing he did is, he washed his feet. So no, first thing is he gave him seating. Second thing is he washed his feet. Supreme Lord Krishna is washing the feet of the Brahmana. And then what he is doing, not only did he wash his feet, he sprinkled the washed water over his head. And then he got certain pastes like the sandalwood, aguru, kumkum pastes, and he applied that to the Brahmana. And then he started offering him aromatic incense and the arrays of lamps, and then he offered him betel nut and a cow. So this is how Krishna welcomed him. And after all that is done, Krishna started speaking pleasing words. So we must see here, one, out of respect, in action, Krishna immediately gets up, he goes, he greets, he meets, he brings him inside, and then he does very, very proper and meticulous way of actually receiving the Brahmana. So Sudama was not only Krishna's friend, Sudama was a Brahman friend. So this is how Krishna would personally worship Brahmanas. And that is why when we chant Krishna's pranam mantra, we say Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Hitaya Cha. So he is actually the one who is a worshipper of the Brahmanas. So this is how he worshipped. And seeing all this, Rukmini Devi, who's non-different from goddess Lakshmi herself, she started fanning. So she held a chamara fan and she started fanning Sudama. So Krishna was worshipping him, washing his feet, and Rukmini Devi was fanning. And this poor Brahman was sitting there and he was like quite confused that what is happening, and everybody else, the citizens who could see that, they were completely astonished. The servants and others, they were astonished that what piety this person has done, so that Krishna is personally taking him so close and this is how he is worshipping him and he is talking to him. He was actually treating Sudama as his own elder brother. So before we proceed further, few more life lessons. So one is, such meticulous hospitality is the reflection of deep-seated love. Give way to love, details would automatically follow. So detail is actually the symptom of love, and we saw here that how in detail, meticulously, Krishna was worshipping Sudama. So why was it happening is because he had a genuine love for Sudama in his heart. Also, he had genuine respect for the Brahmanas. So this is how this was naturally flowing. So we don't have to plan so much on hospitality. We have to give way to love. We have to love people, and then all these details we would automatically, spontaneously, naturally would do. And there is another life lesson here. This is the other life lesson. The secret of happy married life is alignment with the mood and outlook of each other. This is easily possible if Krishna is in the center. So we saw here that when Rukmini saw Krishna worshipping the Brahman, now this Brahman was actually wearing very dirty clothes. Not only the clothes were torn, the clothes were very dirty and shabby also. And he was also quite shabby looking. And yet, when Rukmini Devi saw that Krishna was worshipping him, she instantly picked up a chamar. It is not mentioned that Krishna asked, okay Rukmini, get a chamar and fan him. No. So instantly she was aligned with the mood of her husband. So this is the secret of happy married life, that when we are aligned with each other, when we are on the same page, when we have the same mood and outlook towards the life. So actually, marriages don't become successful if we keep looking at each other. Marriages become successful if both of us together look at the same direction, if we have the same outlook in life. And that is what is demonstrated here by Rukmini Devi. So proceeding further, so after welcoming, now Krishna sat next to the Brahmana and holding his hands, he started talking pleasing words. So they started some discussion. Krishna, the first question what he inquired to Sudama was that, I understand that you gave Guru Dakshina, you offered his respect, you completed your education, and after that you left. Now seeing your clothes, I can understand that you are a householder, because he was not wearing saffron clothes. So he said, I can understand you are a householder. So did you get a compatible wife? So from there he started. So they parted their ways when they completed the education. So Krishna is now catching up from there. So he asked, did you marry a compatible wife? And then he said that looking at you, I can completely understand, even at that time, that your mind was never affected by material desires. You do not have any desire to enjoy wealth, and you never take pleasure in wealth. So how are you executing your material duties? Are you doing okay there? So that is how Krishna started the conversation. And then Krishna makes a very beautiful point there. Krishna is actually talking about the spiritual master there, and he says that a person has 3 types of spiritual master. And then Krishna describes the first spiritual master is the father or the parents probably. So father is the first spiritual master. And then Krishna says that when we get Upanayinam, So that person who gives us Upanayan and who teaches us about the dharma and the varnashramic duties, he is our second spiritual master. And then Krishna says, and then there is a third spiritual master who actually gives us the transcendental knowledge, the knowledge of how I can get out of this cycle of birth and death and perform the devotional service. So Krishna there says that this third type of spiritual master is actually at the platform of the Supreme Lord, and he is the topmost. So he is basically, in our understanding, so one type of a, because today is Teacher's Day, so Guru or teacher, so three categories. First is our parents, second is our teachers who teach us in various aspects, academics, etc. in our life, and third and the most important is a person who gives us the spiritual knowledge. So this is what they discuss. And when this discussion was going on, Sudama was internally thinking, did Krishna, does he really remember me? Because he is worshipping and he is like treating me as if I am some very big person. So does he really remember me, or is there any confusion? So internally he started thinking like that. And Krishna could understand his thought process also. So Krishna started another bit of conversation. So Krishna started talking about that, do you remember one night when our Guru's wife, so their Guru was Sandipani Muni, they were staying in the Gurukul together. So he said, do you remember that our Guru's wife sent us to fetch firewood and an unseasonal storm arose and there was fierce wind and rain and harsh thunder and sun was setting and it was darkness in all the direction and the flooding started and we did not know which is high land, which is low land. We could not demarcate that and we lost our way. So holding each other's hand in great distress, we were wandering aimlessly in the forest. So Krishna started reminding him of that just to ascertain that point that I remember you. Don't get confused. I don't forget. Krishna does not forget his friend and devotee. So he started telling that, and then he said that how we spent the entire night there out of fear. We were not able to go out here and there and we were just hiding somehow from that thunder and storm, and the whole night was over, and next day morning Sandipani Muni Guru, our Guru, had sent a search party, and that is how he came and he found us, he took us back. And when the spiritual master saw us, how he was repenting that because of me you both are suffering here. So he was apologizing and then he blessed. So that time Sandipani Muni blessed both of them and he said that you have now purified your hearts and you are a first class Brahmana and I am very, very satisfied with you. So that is what Sandipani Muni told them. And then he said that the Vedic mantras you have learned will never lose their meanings. So this is how Krishna reminded Sudama that, look, I do remember you. So that is why he quoted that incident. So again, Krishna continued glorifying his spiritual master. He was remembering those days and whatever discussion was happening there, what is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. So there are four main agendas which Krishna and Sudama discussed. So one was significance of student life, as how that is the time of learning and that is what stays, that is what makes the foundation of a person. So that is one part they discussed. The second was they were discussing about their varnashramic duties or varnashram dharma, like different varna, what is the duty. And third, they discussed about the spiritual master, how glorious spiritual master they had and what are the types of spiritual master, like we already discussed. So this they discussed. And the fourth they discussed was about the duties of a disciple. So now this is very interesting that though they were like such thick friends and they were meeting after years and there was so much to catch up with and so much they had shared in the past, but what they were discussing was such important subject matter. So they were not talking, they were not like really gossiping that, do you remember that friend, where did he go, and this friend, where did he go? Like how we meet our old friends on Facebook and we start catching up ki haan, so what happened and what are you up to and so many details. Here they are meeting and what they are discussing about significance of student life, about varnashram dharma, about their duties, about spiritual master, about the duties of disciples. So this is what they were discussing, and here comes our life lesson from this, The difference between successful and regular people is what do they talk about. Ordinary discussions will not achieve extraordinary results. So when our conversation is extraordinary, when we are discussing the topics which are extraordinary, then we will achieve something which is extraordinary. But if we think that just discussing that did your maid start coming and what did you cook for lunch and what is in for dinner, if we are just discussing these things, or how was your performance and how is your company doing and how is the cricket happening and how is corona going, if we just discuss the regular stuff, we will not get extraordinary result. So what is that extraordinary discussion? The extraordinary discussion is what we all are doing now. So if we discuss this, then we attain success. So going further, after this, finally Krishna, because Krishna is a Supreme Lord and he knows everyone's heart and past, present and future. So Krishna started laughing and smiling and he said, I can see that you have got me a gift and you are not giving me that gift. Now Sudama was very embarrassed. Now imagine, Sudama was sitting in a palace and so much of opulence, and he had this tiny pack of rice which he had like tied in his waist. So he was hiding it away. And Krishna there again, he speaks that verse from 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. So he talks about that and he says that a leaf, some water or fruit or flower, anything what you offer with me with devotion, I accept it because I see the devotion and not the commodity. So he was hanging his head down in shame. Sudama was feeling very embarrassed, and Lord was thinking that I will give him the riches that even Indra cannot attain. I'll give him so much of opulence. And thinking like that, Krishna actually snatched his bag. And then Krishna started eating. So he ate one handful from that. And then he was very happy. And then he was about to eat the other handful. And at that, Rukmini Devi stopped him. And she took the bag saying that we all also have to eat. And she took away the bag, and in her mind she was thinking, so she did not speak it loud, but Rukmini Devi was thinking that just one palm full what you have eaten is much more to take care of Sudama's this life and the next. If you will eat everything, then how would you ever repay Krishna? So thinking like that, ki Sudama's life is taken care of just because you have eaten one handful. And thinking like that, Rukmini Devi takes that bag from him. So the poor Brahman was having very nice time there, and Krishna requested him to stay back, and he stayed back overnight, and they had lot of discussions, and then he rested nicely. And then next day morning he got up and he got ready and he was leaving. And even till now Krishna does not mention anything about giving him anything. So now Brahman started thinking that if I suddenly become rich, then I may forget Krishna. And this is the reason why my Supreme Lord is not giving me any opulence. And I am completely satisfied. I had his darshan, I had his association. What more do I want? So thinking like that, he happily started going back to his home. So he didn't ask, and he didn't even think, oh, I'll reach home and my wife will ask that you went all the way, so what did you bring? How did your friend, did he not give you anything? So he was not thinking of all those things. He was just thinking that for my benefit, Krishna is not giving me anything. So like that, he started going back. And then here we have few other life lessons coming up. So one is, Lord not only sees what we give, but what we are holding back. So in Sudama's case, whatever he got, he was not holding back anything. I mean, for Sudama, he did not had that flat rice for himself to eat, and yet he borrowed and got it for Krishna. So, but if we also start thinking like that, ki, okay, I may have so many things, but because Sudama gave some little flat rice, so that is enough for Krishna and Krishna will be satisfied. So that is not the case. So Lord is not only seeing what we are giving, he is also seeing what we are holding back. And there is another life lesson here. Gift is an expression of love, care and gratitude. Accepting graciously and giving generously. One must master both the arts. So when we receive the gift, how do I act? So that is accepting graciously. So we saw that the Supreme Lord, who is the master of the entire universe, how he received that gift. Krishna is teaching us how to receive the gift, how to accept the gift graciously. Not that when I get a gift, I start thinking that, oh, I gave him so much, I gave such nice gift and he's giving me such shabby gift back. So we get into that comparison mode. So no, it is not about that. So accepting graciously and giving generously. Now who's giving generously here? So Sudama is giving generously. Sudama had no, he could not manage any gift. He had to actually borrow something from other to give it as a gift. So if we see from Sudama's standpoint, it was such a generous gift because his children did not eat, but then he got that to give it to Krishna. He did not eat, his wife did not eat, he borrowed and got it for Krishna. So accepting graciously and giving generously, one must master both the arts. So going further, finally Sudama reached his hut, but that hut was missing there, and that hut was replaced by this beautiful palace. Again, picture courtesy Ruchika. So now when Sudama reached back, he saw that the hut was missing, and instead of the hut stands this huge palatial palace which was shining so bright that it is described that the sun, fire and moon, everything together. See, these are the three things which illuminates: sun, fire and moon, everything taken together, yet the palace was defeating all three of them together. That is how sparkling this palace was. And there were these huge courtyard and gardens, and there were ponds, and there were birds flocking in it, and there were 5 or 6 varieties of lotuses were growing in that, and there were so many, countless servants were there holding hands and standing. And Sudama started wondering, whose property is it? Whose property is it? From where did it come? How did it happen? And then he saw that these servants were actually as beautiful as demigods. And then he saw from a distance one extraordinarily beautiful lady was walking out. And when this lady came closer, then Sudama realizes that this is actually his wife. And then he realized, and then there was a loud music going on, and I mean beautiful, soothing yet loud music was going on, and he was welcomed inside. And this is how, when the wife saw Sudama, her eyes were filled with fear, and Sudama was also weeping and crying. And then when he enters inside the palace, he sees that inside each of the pillar, completely gem-studded pillar. And it is described that the bed was as soft and white as the foam of the sea water. So that is how the bed was. And then there were these cushions and like beautiful things, and bedstead was made of ivory and ornamented with gold, and then there were people giving him chamra, and there were golden thrones and soft cushions. So I mean, all in all, it is mentioned in Bhagavatam that this opulence defeats the opulence of Indra. So much was given to him, and Sudama is thinking there, Sudama standing there, and he starts thinking over there, and he starts thanking Krishna internally. He says that throughout my life I was living in poverty. So of course this is the blessing of Krishna that I have suddenly got so much of opulence. So he starts thanking the Supreme Lord. He starts feeling the presence of Krishna in everything that was surrounding him. Now my dear devotees, here comes the beautiful part of this story, because many of us would have read this story. But the beautiful part, which is personally my favorite, is if Krishna had to give so much of opulence to Sudama, why he did not tell him? Why it was left in anxiety mode that he did not get anything? So beautifully this point is elaborated by one of our Acharya, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, and he explains us that Krishna was very ashamed of his gift. We are talking about Sudama being ashamed of the gift, but actually Krishna was very ashamed of giving him this palace. Now, why is it so? It is so because Krishna is the master of the entire universe. Okay, now Sudama gives him a gift which actually does not belong to him. So Sudama had to borrow and give him the gift, which means Sudama goes outside his capacity and gives him a gift. Krishna was so embarrassed. How can I ever reciprocate with Sudama, because everything belongs to me? So Sudama borrowed something and gave it to him. How can I do the same thing with Sudama? He starts thinking like that everything belongs to me. All the created thing, the entire universe, it belongs to me. So if I want to genuinely reciprocate with my friend's feeling, I do not have capacity. So that is why Krishna was ashamed and embarrassed that I am just giving him one palace and some riches, which is an insignificant part of my huge opulence. So this is a beautiful part of how Krishna and Sudama's relationship was. This is how they were nurturing each other with their like insatiable love. So here we have one life lesson with this. In order to acquire the vision to actually see Krishna, because all of us have that desire to see Krishna. So in order to acquire the vision to actually see Krishna, start seeing his presence in everything around you. So like how Sudama, when he did not get any opulence, he was happy. When he got the treatment, such wonderful treatment from Krishna, he was happy. When Krishna did not give him anything, he was still happy. And when he realized that Krishna has given him the palace, again he is happy. And in all the different situations, why was he happy? He was happy because he was constantly thinking of Krishna. So similarly, if we learn this art of seeing Krishna around us in everything, whatever good, whatever auspicious happens to us, if we see Krishna's hands in that, then the day will come, my dear friends, that when we will actually see Krishna. So with this, we have completed the nurture pastime, and going next, we will see how Krishna is a dependable friend. So I invite Amren Gaur Prabhu to continue with our session about Krishna and Draupadi.
Hare Krishna. So I hope my voice is audible. I think last time there were some issues with it. Okay, so we have heard about how Krishna and Arjuna were really good friends, and now we will see that how actually a very deep friendly bond existed between Draupadi and Krishna also. So some of you who had attended last session, we saw that how Arjuna actually kidnapped Subhadra and married Subhadra, and the Yadus invited them back to Dwarka. They were married, and when they were going back to Indraprastha, they had given so much wealth to Arjuna that there was a long line, a long queue of chariots and of horses, and all of them were carrying that immense amount of wealth which the Yadus had given. So all that caravan, long caravan reached Indraprastha, and Arjuna, he got down from the chariot, and first thing he did was he immediately went and had darshan of his elder brother, the king Yudhishthir. He clasped his feet, he worshipped him, and then he worshipped the other rishis in the court like Dhaumya, and then finally he was embraced by his brothers because they were all waiting for him. He was out on an exile for an year and they had not seen each other for such a long time. So, it was a meeting which was long awaited. And after that, all his brothers got very excited that we want to hear about your adventures. So they were discussing about different things. Finally, Arjuna went to see Draupadi. So Draupadi was in her chamber, and when Arjuna came in, actually Draupadi turned away from him. And she asked him, "What brings you here? It is better that you be with your new bride. She'll be missing you." So this is how Draupadi started talking to Arjuna, that your new bride will miss you. Better you go there. Why have you come here? So actually why Draupadi was saying this is because she was annoyed. Among all the Pandavas, Arjuna was her favorite. And now he was thinking, now Arjuna is married to Subhadra and he would begin to prefer Subhadra over her. So this is what was going on in her mind. And actually Arjuna repeatedly asked forgiveness from Draupadi, and he was saying that no, my love for you will never reduce, it will never go down. So this is how he was trying to convince Draupadi. Still Draupadi continued to sulk and she was not looking in Arjuna's direction, and she was, after some time, she was just quiet. So Arjuna, thinking what to do, how to resolve this situation, so he went out, he went back, and then he was thinking that actually Draupadi has a very dear friend in Krishna, and Subhadra is Krishna's sister. So somehow if this fact is revealed to Draupadi, if Draupadi realizes that this Subhadra is actually sister of Krishna, who is a very dear friend of hers, and then probably the whole thing will get resolved. So Draupadi knew that Arjuna was actually in an early period, he was in a village called Vrindavan, and he would go out as a cowherd, and he lived a very simple life at that time. So this is what Draupadi knew. So Arjuna came, he went and met Subhadra, and he requested her that why don't you appear as a simple cowherd girl? And if that will happen, then natural affection of Draupadi will come. So there were these servant ladies, they brought one maiden in to Draupadi's chamber, and they announced, oh Draupadi, this maiden is asking if she can become your servant. This is what this maiden is asking. So Subhadra, and when Subhadra was brought in, so she immediately bowed down to Draupadi, and she said, I am here to do your bidding. Whatever you will tell me, I am willing to do that. So actually Draupadi had never seen Subhadra, and she couldn't recognize who she is, because Subhadra was dressed in a very, very simple silk sari, very plain, not much ornaments, nothing, very simple girl. That's how she was dressed. And so what happened? So Draupadi saw that this girl is very humble. She bowed down and she wanted to serve me. And then she also saw that cowherd dress of Subhadra, and she was reminded of her friend Krishna. So immediately Draupadi blessed her. She said, may you become wife of a hero and mother of a hero. May you be without a rival. This is what Draupadi blessed her with. So Subhadra said, she said, may it be so. So we see that actually Subhadra was already married to a hero, Arjuna, and we see later that how Abhimanyu, a great hero, appears from her womb. So both the blessings of Draupadi, one had already occurred and the other one would soon occur in a short period of time. And then Subhadra had not yet announced and introduced herself. So she introduced, I am Subhadra, Krishna's sister. And when she said that, then Draupadi smiled and embraced her. Then all her the jealousy and that anger towards the new co-wife had melted away. So because she reminded her of her dear friend Krishna, and she was very gentle. Subhadra was very gentle. So all of that, created such great bonding between them. And immediately Draupadi took her and they started talking, and they talked for hours about what? About Dwarka, about Krishna, and they spoke for hours about that. And then finally Draupadi took her by her hand, Subhadra, to meet Kunti, Mother Kunti. So that's how it went. So we have very nice life lessons from this incident that we can learn. Number one, that remembrance of Lord purifies our heart of any misgivings. So if you notice, if you introspect, yes, we have so many misgivings in our heart. So many things that are there, negative things are there in our heart. So how do we get rid of those negative things? How do we get rid of those misgivings? That is possible if we remember the Supreme Lord. So when we remember the Supreme Lord is present in our heart. He cleans our heart. He takes a broom and he cleans the heart, and all those misgivings go away from us. So that's how we saw in case of Draupadi. And second very nice life lesson, that genuine humility melts the heart and brings acceptance. So we saw that it was a very difficult relationship between two co-wives, but because Subhadra was very humble, very gentle, offered obeisances, was willing to serve, so therefore it melted the heart of Draupadi. So genuine humility melts the heart and brings acceptance. So this is a very important life lesson. We may be in several relationships in our life, in our family and in our friends and relatives, even at workplace. If there is genuine humility, it melts heart, and it it's an amazing icebreaker. If some relationship which has become very cold, very difficult, very stiff, if we are genuinely humble, we are willing to work on that relationship, then definitely it will act as an icebreaker. So this is a very nice incident, and so we will go a little further. The Pandavas were having unparalleled opulence, and Narad Muni once came and he suggested to Yudhishthira Maharaj that why don't you conduct a Rajasuya Yagya. So Rajasuya Yagya was a very opulent Yagya, and so much hard work had to be done for that. Only one who can claim to be an emperor of the entire planet actually was the result of the Rajasuya Yagya. So anybody who is able to successfully perform Rajasuya Yagya means that he becomes the emperor of the entire planet. So this is what Narad Muni was requesting Yudhishthira Maharaj, that this is what you should do. It was actually Pandu's request, his father's request, that you should do that. So what will happen by Rajasuya Yagya? Yes, he will become the emperor, but what will be the result of performing Rajasuya Yagya? So one was that by performing that Yagya, this world will be freed from demoniac influences. Why? Because if there are many demoniac kings means they don't accept the Supreme Lord. So if those kings are subdued, then the demoniac nature will get subdued. So this was one. And second, in the Rajasuya Yagya, the performer has to establish the chief person. Who is the chief person of this Yagya? So Yudhishthira Maharaj, he was thinking, if he makes Krishna as the chief person, then Lord's fame and his position will be established all over the planet. In this Yagya, great personalities would come, like Lord Shiva, Brahma, the many Devatas, all of them would come personally in attendance of this particular Yagya. So imagine, in presence of such exalted personalities, if Krishna, the chief person, is worshipped by all of them, then what amazing message we will send to the entire planet, entire world, that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. So actually this was the best form of mass preaching by Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Pandavas. So it was a great sacrifice. It is described over more than a chapter in Mahabharata. We can go through it. And it was successfully completed. During that time, Shishupal was also killed. And Yudhishthira Maharaj was firmly established as the emperor of the universe. Uncountable wealth had come to him. Krishna had been established as the chief person, the Supreme Lord. So when the sacrifice concluded, all the kings left one by one. But the Pandavas begged, Krishna, you please stay with us. We want you to continue to stay with us. So sometimes this happens when some of our dear friend or relative comes and the time comes for them to leave. So, but we tell them, no, please stay for one more day, please stay for 2 more days, just stay for a little longer, extend your visit. So that's how Pandavas were very affectionate. Krishna was also very affectionate. So Krishna actually sent his party back to Dwarka, and Krishna with his queens, they stayed back at Indraprastha. So at that time, Krishna was actually personally served by Queen Draupadi. So and Krishna also began to develop much affection for the queen. So they had very nice bonding as friends. So one time Draupadi was serving fruits to Krishna, and Krishna picked up a knife and he started paring the fruits. He started cutting and he was, preparing those fruits for eating. And in that, the knife fell from his hand and it nicked his finger. It just cut his finger, and blood started coming. And immediately, the moment Draupadi saw this, immediately she tore her sari. Now she is a queen. Now we can understand each of her sari would be invaluable. So she was wearing an invaluable silk sari, but she didn't care. The moment she saw that, she tore open that sari and she gave that piece of silk to Krishna. And when Krishna saw this, Krishna said, "Oh gentle lady, I will surely repay this gift of your sari." This is what Krishna told him, that I promise that I will surely one day I will return a gift for this sari that you have given me. So Draupadi became, in modesty, she looked down, she thanked Krishna, and Krishna wrapped that piece of silk and then he went away. So we remember this because next what we are going to discuss about Draupadi has a huge bearing, from this particular pastime. We know later that how there was a gambling match, and the Kauravas tried to disrobe her, and then how Krishna preserved her chastity and preserved her honor there. So before we move there, we look at a life lesson. Love brings the natural spontaneity. So if we love someone, then naturally we are spontaneous. If there is any need, if there is any help the other person, we are very spontaneously willing to help and serve that other person. So here we saw that Draupadi did not even think. Immediately she tore a piece of sari and she gave it to Krishna. Okay, so we go further down. The Rajasuya Yagya, actually the Kauravas were also invited. In fact, they were part of the Yagya. Duryodhan had some service of receiving the gifts. Dushasan had certain service. Dronacharya had service. Vidura had service. Vidura was the treasurer of the king's treasury at Indraprastha. So all that service was there because they were visiting and they were like the hosts. But seeing all this, Duryodhan became extremely mad with envy. He could not tolerate that how his enemy could be so prosperous. There were times so much gifts came to Yudhishthira Maharaj that sometimes the gifts had to be returned because there was no place to keep them. There were mountains of gems and mountains of gold. There were millions of animals and the elephants and the camels and the cows. So sometimes there was no place to receive the gift also. So that sometimes the gifts were returned. So Duryodhan became mad with that envy. And he started saying that I will enter fire, I will consume poison, I will drown myself, I will die. But I cannot tolerate this, that Pandavas become so opulent and they have so much of prosperity. So he was discussing all this with Shakuni. Now we know Shakuni is, his mama and always giver of such advice which will lead to his destruction. So Shakuni was saying, see, you cannot fight a war with Pandavas, especially when Krishna is there, and win it. It is not possible for you. Not just for you, even the celestial devatas, if they come today to fight Pandavas, they cannot also win. So challenging Yudhishthira, you cannot do. But what you can do is, you call him for a gambling match. You challenge him to a game of dice. Yudhishthira is not an expert, but no one in this entire planet can defeat me. And then I will acquire all of Yudhishthira's wealth for you. Then I will give it to you. So Duryodhan said, yes, that is what we should be looking for. That's how I can do that, because I cannot tolerate this. Otherwise, I will die. So this is the best option forward. So they immediately went and discussed with Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra actually knew that this is a very, very bad idea. And this is not okay and this is not good. So what he said is that I will consult with Vidura. Duryodhan immediately became angry. What you are going to discuss with Vidura? Vidura will of course say no. So if you will speak like this, I will take my own life. I will die. This is what Duryodhan said. So somehow back and forth. over a period of time, Dhritarashtra agreed, because he was also blind, not only physically but also in his love for his son Duryodhana. So Dhritarashtra said, okay, Vidura is not agreeing, but what I will do is I will try to convince Vidura. I will try to convince him, and I will construct a huge gambling hall where this gambling match will happen. When Vidura heard that Dhritarashtra is planning for a gambling match, he immediately said, what are you thinking? What are you saying? This will bring dispute, this will bring fighting. In fact, this will lead to the destruction of the entire Kuru dynasty. So Dhritarashtra is saying that it is fate. If destruction has to come, it will come. We cannot stop. Then Vidura checked him. He said, you cannot talk about fate. Everything is free will. What you get is what you choose. So this is the time you reject this idea. But of course, Dhritarashtra didn't listen to Vidura. In fact, he called him and he told, you go to Indraprastha and you call the Pandavas. So Vidura was forced, and then he goes to Indraprastha. So we have a nice life lesson here. One thing that I'm sure some of us might have experienced this in our own life. Envy makes one blind even while having functioning eyes. It is not that Duryodhana could not see, but because he was blinded by that envy, he could not see his own destruction in this plan. So that is one. And second, impious deeds can never bring prosperity. So we saw that how the whole Kauravas, they schemed against the Pandavas. For some time, they grabbed all their wealth and everything. They sent them to exile. But at the end, there was a huge war and all of them were killed. So impious deeds can never lead to long-term prosperity. So because nowadays, our moral values have become such that we don't even think for a moment whether this is right or wrong. If it gives money, then it is all okay. That's the kind of consciousness that we have come to. But we need to understand these principles of dharma never go in vain. If we break dharma, dharma will break us. If we follow dharma, then dharma will protect us. So Vidura went to the Pandavas and he said that Dhritarashtra is inviting you for the game of dice. And Duryodhana desires this game. Shakuni will play with you, and the blind king has given the permission. You have to come. So we need to understand at that time, it is not that Yudhishthir could not see, it is not that Vidura could not see, it is not that the Pandavas couldn't understand that this will lead to a disaster. They could see. But please understand that Yudhishthir was Dharmaraj. Yudhishthir had taken vows that I will never refuse my elder's orders. If my elder is ordering me, I have to follow. Dhritarashtra was his elder, respectful elder, the king of the Kuru dynasty, and I must follow his advice. So this is one. And second, as a Kshatriya whenever challenged, a Kshatriya code is that he must accept that challenge. So here it came as a challenge that he has to accept this game of gambling match. And Yudhishthir very clearly explained that I have no desire to play dice. I have no desire to play gamble. I don't want to gamble. But then it is coming and I cannot avoid. So this must be a divine plan. I cannot understand it now, but somehow Lord desires. And if Lord desires that all my wealth goes away, what can I do? How can I stop it? It is not possible for me. So this is how Yudhishthir Maharaj was thinking within himself. Why I am discussing all of this in so much of detail? Because as I explained earlier also, there is so much of negative talk, especially regarding this pastime of Mahabharata. So many people blame Yudhishthir Maharaj. Why did he do that? He did all things he did well, but this thing he did very wrong. How is it possible? If a person is doing 100% right things, how he can do one thing wrong? Right? So here if we read carefully, that actually Yudhishthir Maharaj did not do anything wrong. In fact, friendly dice match was allowed among Kshatriyas, and we will see further. So Yudhishthir along with his brothers and Draupadi, they all went to Hastinapur. and there was a new, brand new assembly hall was made for gambling, and all of them settled in. And the next day when the gambling match was about to start, Yudhishthir told Shakuni, one, playing dice is immoral, right? Second, he recalled that Devala Rishi had told me that I should not engage in playing with a professional gambler. You are a professional gambler, you are the best at this game, and I should not be playing with you. Then he said, actually Shakuni, you are probably trying to, through this gamble, by unfair means you will take my wealth. Actually my wealth is meant for the service of devotees of the Lord. So you should not take away that wealth, because what you will do I don't know, but this wealth I am going to use for the service of devotees of the Lord. Then he said, I have no desire to earn wealth, and even enemies should not be destroyed by cheating them at dice. This should not be done. It is adharmic. So what did Shakuni say? Shakuni said, if you are so fearful, do not play. Now for a Kshatriya, it is a challenge that you are fearful, you cannot take up this challenge, you are useless, you are a eunuch. Like this, the whole talk will go. So this was again Kshatriya quote. So Yudhishthir at that time, he looked at all the Kuru elders. Dhritarashtra was there, Dronacharya was there, Bhishma was there, Vidura was there. He looked at all of them and all of them were just quiet. And then he was thinking, oh, so it is actually with the approval of these elders that all this is going on. So then I must play. And then Yudhishthir Maharaj pointed another fallacy there. He said, I will play who can equal my stakes. Now we understand that the wealth of Yudhishthir Maharaj was uncomparable. And of course, Shakuni did not have that kind of wealth. So Shakuni was not a match for playing gambling with Yudhishthir Maharaj. So that's what Yudhishthir Maharaj said. So who will play with me? Who can equally stake as I do? And that's a time when Duryodhan stepped in and he said, don't worry, whatever Shakuni wants, I will give. Then Yudhishthir Maharaj said, this is not okay. If you have to supply to him, better you play rather than Shakuni playing. So, and then again, Yudhishthir Maharaj looked at all the Kuru elders and all of them were quiet. So, we have to see that how they all conspired. It was not just Shakuni, it was not just Duryodhan, it was also Dhritarashtra and the other Kuru elders who all conspired against the Pandavas. And of course, if we see from whole Mahabharata perspective, it is the arrangement of the Lord. And that is how the great Mahabharata was fought, and all these impious kings from all over the planet, they were killed in just that one single war. So Lord's objective was attained. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. I protect the devotees and I annihilate the miscreants. So Lord achieved his objective in that just single war. So that gambling match started and only two sounds were coming in that gambling match. Everybody was sitting and watching the gambling match and only two sounds were coming. First vocal was from Yudhishthir Maharaj. I am staking this. And the second sound was of Shakuni crying out, hey, I have won again, I have won again. That's all. Yudhishthir Maharaj would stake the claim and lose, Shakuni will win. And that's how one by one Yudhishthir Maharaj lost everything. So when Vidura was seeing this, he got up, he got very angry and he got very upset with Dhritarashtra. He said, Kans was slain by his own people from his own dynasty. Why? Because he was wrong, he was cruel, he was not following dharma. So he was killed. So I am asking you now, Vidura told Dhritarashtra, I am asking you now to order Arjuna to kill Duryodhan. You order him to kill Duryodhan. You are creating enmity with Pandavas, from whom even the celestial devatas cannot win. These Kauravas will be destroyed, Dhritarashtra, and you will be the cause for it. So this is how Vidura was telling, but what Dhritarashtra was doing? He was just keeping quiet. He was just keeping quiet. So Dhritarashtra was silent, and Duryodhan and Shakuni became more and more bold, and they moved in. So Yudhishthira lost all his wealth, he lost his kingdom, he lost his brothers. Finally, Yudhishthira lost himself. And at that time is described that how Yudhishthira Maharaj was fervently praying to the Lord. That Lord, I don't know what is happening, you please save me. You please save us. This is the prayer that Yudhishthira Maharaj was doing. And finally, Shakuni was so cunning that he was trying to manipulate Yudhishthira Maharaj, and he was egging on that now you have your wife left, you bet her, you stake her. You know, there is still, she is there, she can be, you can put her, through her you can win yourself back. You stake your wife, and if you win, then you can take yourself back. You need not be, no longer be slave of the Kauravas. So this is how he was egging on, and then somehow she was staked and she was lost. And then Vidura got up. And again he said, this is not okay. Yudhishthira had lost himself. He was a slave. So if a slave, how he can stake somebody else? When he does, slave means he does not have anything of his own. So at that time, how can he stake Draupadi, who was a queen, who was a princess? How he can stake her? So this is not okay. Even at that time, Dhritarashtra was silent. So Dhritarashtra was silent, and Yudhishthira was looking at all the Kuru elders, and then he just, he couldn't do, he was bound by those moral codes. He had decided that I will never transgress these codes. In fact, for Yudhishthira Maharaj, his values and virtues were such that he considered that his superiors are like the Supreme Lord himself. Whatever they have said are like the instructions of the Supreme Lord. And then he was thinking that this terrible time is somehow an arrangement of the Lord. Although at the same time he didn't want so much calamity to fall on Draupadi, but he was thinking that somehow this is a arrangement of the Lord. So this was going on. So Duryodhan told, fetch Draupadi. He told Pratikamin, you go and you bring Draupadi here. So when Pratikamin went to bring Draupadi, Draupadi also asked the same question, that if Yudhishthira had lost himself, can he bet me? Can he stake me? Was he my lord when he was taking me? When he was putting me on bet? You go, she told Pratikamin, you go and ask this question to the people of the Kuru assembly, and then whatever they say, I will follow. So Pratikamin came back, and Duryodhan became very angry. Why you have come without Draupadi? Pratikamin asked that question, that she is asking this question. The whole assembly was quiet. In fact, in this whole discussion, we will see that Bhishma Dev also said in between that he is not clear what is right and what is wrong. He is not able to make up his mind. So Pratikamin is sent back again. And then when he goes second time, he tells Draupadi that destruction of the Kuru dynasty is close at hand. By dragging you, by calling you in that assembly, Duryodhan will lose all his opulence, will lose all his prosperity. Then Draupadi said, you go and ask them that Kuru, the elder members of Kuru, morality has to be preserved. You should not, as Kuru, you should not abandon morality. And then you tell them this and see what they say, and then I will come. Whatever they command they will give, I will follow. So when 2 times Pratikamin had come like this, and the whole assembly was quiet, Yudhishthira Maharaj said that you go and call her. You tell her that Duryodhan is calling you. And after saying this, also Yudhishthira Maharaj saw Dhritarashtra, all the elders, and they were all just quiet. Actually, so we see